Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation at Eastern Academy of Management International. The topic of my presentation is the study of mediating role of machine learning between biased datasets and algorithms and moderating role of the biased datasets from training hiring managers. My name is Minoo Selseleh. I am a PhD candidate at York University, Canada. Here is an overview of my presentation after an introduction about the AI role in hiring and the importance of addressing biases in hiring decisions when AI is used. I will review machine learning and how biases find their way in algorithms, the role of historical data in machine learning. Then I will provide some examples of bias perpetuation in hiring decisions. Then I will review theoretical frameworks that can help us to explain this phenomena. I review my two hypotheses after. And after going over sensitivity training, I will share with you my third hypothesis, which is about the moderating role of training managers. Then I will go over the details of my hypothesized model and how this hypothesized model can direct future studies about AI and hiring decisions. As you know, organizations increasingly use AI-based hiring systems to avoid discrimination against protected groups. It's believed that AI is neutral, but often it mirrors human biases. So Ariel mentioned protected groups. As you know, different aspects of someone's identity, like age, race, disability, sexual orientation, and other aspects can be discriminated against when they are trying to find a job and during the hiring process. And it's believed that when we use AI, it's more neutral, so people are not discriminated against based on their age, their gender, their race. And this study presents a model to explore if a relationship between original biased datasets and biased algorithms can be moderated by hiring decisions made by managers who pass sensitivity training. AI, as I mentioned, is becoming common and is increasingly used to avoid discriminatory decisions when making hiring decisions. While artificial intelligence is often perceived as impartial, numerous real-world examples indicate otherwise. One very famous case is Amazon's case. Amazon started using artificial intelligence for screening job candidates' resume. As you know, the first step for screening, recruitment and selection is just screening resumes of job applicants. And Amazon started using AI in this and other assessment, and Amazon noticed that AI excluded female candidates when I used AI for screening. Exclusion of older job candidates is another example when previous hiring decisions always just hired younger candidates or more junior candidates. So when AI uses this historical data, it learns that this is a criteria. In the first example, exclusion of female candidates, when previous hiring decisions always ended up hiring men, AI learns that being a man is a good criteria, which it has to adhere to that and just hire job candidates who are male. In my second example, if previous hiring decisions resulted in just hiring more, younger job candidates, AI builds an algorithm through machine learning that being a young is a criterion for hiring job candidates. Understanding the root causes of this bias hiring decision is crucial for addressing the issue. That's why I'm reviewing two theories to understand why this at all happens in the first place. Biases in hiring decisions, as I mentioned, result in biased datasets or historical data, which is later fed into the system. AI learns through machine learning, builds algorithm, and makes the same biased hiring decisions. So as I mentioned, AI systems rely on machine learning to develop algorithms. Machine learning uses historical data, which can be biased, and biased data leads to biased algorithms perpetuating discrimination. So the predominance of white men in hiring data leads to algorithm favoring white men, rejection of rejection of candidates who do not have, for example, Canadian work experience trains AI that only accept people with Canadian work experience. What I'm trying to explain is that machine learning happens through algorithms. So algorithms basically are created after machine learning, and it's based on catching the patterns. AI tries to find the patterns and repeats the same patterns. Here is a visual of what I just explained. So as you can see here in the interview panel, we have these people who are going to interview a job candidate who is sitting in front of them. They have their biases in their mind. It can be gender bias, it can be race bias, it can be disability bias or other types of bias, any kind of bias or combination of them. And most of the time people are not even aware of their biases, and they make the hiring decisions based on these biases, and they produce historical data, which is their hiring decisions. Which candidates were rejected, which candidates were hired. And then when you feed this historical data into the AI system, so AI system trains and learns from this previous data, this historical data, and builds, catch or spot those patterns and trends. So builds the same gender bias, race bias, disability bias, age bias, or combination of them. And when AI in the next step is used and is replaced with human, hoping that AI will not make biased decision making because AI is not human. But the fact is that AI works based on machine learning and algorithm, and whatever that AI uses is previous data. So AI makes the hiring decision using the same biases that this human have used, and interfered the biases that interfered with the hiring decision. And when eventually these two candidates, job candidates, compete with each other for the job, and when in reality, based on the resume, based on the assessment, this job candidate, this lady is a better match for the position and her qualification matches the job requirements, AI rejects this candidate and hires this guy because this guy is younger and is white and he's a male. So he has three privileges that AI believes should be used. These criteria should be used for hiring decision. So this is how biases find their way when AI is replaced with human for making hiring decisions and assessment and assessing job candidates. So the theoretical frameworks that I've chosen to explain this phenomena and find out why at all this issue happens. First is social cognition theory, which is the foundation for cognitive bias and automatic stereotyping. It explains how humans develop categories to sort and retrieve information, which simplifies complex context and help predict future events. As you know, when hiring and in recruitment and selection, basically what recruiter and hiring managers or hiring team do is to predict the future performance of the job candidate. They try to run assessment to find out which candidate can do a better job if they are hired. So it relies heavily on prediction, and in absence of complete information about a job candidate, this stereotyping and these categories get activated and can result in biased decision making, and I will explain in more detail here. So social cognition theory explains the role of unconscious categorization in hiring decision. And what do we mean by unconscious categorization? Basically, it's the same as automatic stereotyping. When hiring managers make decisions without complete information, they have only the resume of job candidates or a couple of interview assessments that they have made, or they made the job candidate to do those assessments, to complete those tests in order to predict their future candidate. But they don't have everything. They are not sure that this pieces of information are complete, so stereotyping gets activated and sometimes beyond the conscious control of people who are making the hiring decisions. So stereotypes filling the gaps, filling the missing information, and the result is overgeneralizing specific characters of each category to all members of the same category. For example, what you have in terms of stereotypes about female job candidates, about people with disability, about people with people who belong to marginalized group. So those get activated, and they overshadow the information that you have in front of you. You have the resume of the candidate, you have the result of multiple assessment that you have administered. So those stereotyping get activated and kind of overshadow all whatever that you have in front of you. Thus, any information about the high competence of the job candidate and the fact that probably this candidate is the best match with the job is ruled over and by a stereotype, because it kind of contradicts the stereotype. If the stereotype is that, for example, a female job candidate is not a good match for managerial positions because of this stereotyping idea that managerial positions are only for men, this stereotype overshadow the fact that this female job candidate is the best match, has several previous work experiences as a manager, and has been a successful manager in their previous roles. This stereotyping results in screening out this female job candidate, which is just an example of a stereotyping based on gender. So social cognition theory explains why certain groups may be systematically favored or disadvantaged in hiring processes due to prevalent stereotypes. So in my example, this stereotype about gender favors male job candidates. So even if the competencies and skills and qualifications of female candidates is better than a male candidate. Because of this stereotype, male job candidates are have a better position and they might be eventually selected. Or if I share another example about people with disability, if you have some stereotype as a hiring manager, you have a stereotype about the abilities general abilities of a person with disability. For example, if the job has nothing to do with mobility and you can see someone is on wheelchair, and because of this stereotype that you have, this is a job that doesn't need the person to move around, and they can basically do the job, and their resume shows that this job candidate, while she or he has a disability, is the best match for the position. But because you have this stereotyping about people with disability, you reject this job candidate and hire another job candidate who doesn't have a disability but is not the best match for the position. So another theory that explains the situation is a status characteristic theory. A status characteristic theory, basically race and gender are associated with widely held beliefs about higher or lower competence in specific areas, leading to bias or judgment. So according to this theory, these beliefs about status characteristics such as race, gender, disability influence judgment about competence. So unlike stereotyping, which is like you classify different people based on their gender, and you believe that, okay, female managers do not function well, so this is a stereotype, and a bunch of other characteristics which negatively interfere with your assessment. This is a stereotyping. But in the status characteristics, you assign a specific, you devalue the competence of a person because of their race, because of their gender. So it has to do something with status and competence. So you devalue the knowledge of someone who has a disability, or someone who belongs, someone whose race is not, someone who is not white, or some races that you assign some devaluation because of their race. So according to gender stereotypes, so here I compare these two theoretical frameworks. According to gender stereotypes, certain behaviors are expected from men or women. However, gender status belief dictates socially believed competence assigned to men or women. This is how they are different. So in gender stereotype, you believe that this list of behavior are always common when you see a woman, when you see a man, or a person with disability. While according to the status theory, or for example, in our example, gender, beliefs dictate socially believed competence assigned to men and women, and both status characteristics and stereotyping theories result in biases that interfere with your judgments and when you want to make a decision. How does the status characteristics theory explain biased hiring decision, competence assumption? For example, higher status groups like white people, white men, which are privileged by being white and a male, are often judged to perform better than lower status groups. This is how status theory explains about the, those biases, how biases basically are created. And empirical studies shows that they are basically interfere with our judgment. And when we are making hiring decisions, basically it relies heavily on judgments. So our judgments are biased, are based on those assumptions. So stereotypes and status characteristics act as a cognitive shortcuts, leading to biased judgments when making decisions. Machine learning relies on identifying patterns through algorithms, and machine learning's dependence on historical data can perpetuate bias. And so this is how biases find their way in hiring decisions. So after reviewing these frameworks, now you know how we basically stereotyping functions, how how judgments about a job candidate's status might interfere with our assessment of their competence. And when making these decisions, this historical data which is fed into the system trains a machine learning what they should do or how make those decisions. So human decision makers biases find their way into algorithms, while AI application in hiring was intended to be neutral. It reproduces the same human biases through machine learning, and thus AI potential for unbiased hiring is hindered by biased historical data. So my hypothesis, my first hypothesis is that there is a negative relationship between biased data sets and algorithms, and machine learning mediates the relationship between biased data sets and biased decision making. The role of, now I basically hypothesize that if we offer sensitivity training to hiring managers and deliver this training to those people who are in charge of making hiring decisions, it can help them to gain awareness and change their attitude and gain skill and knowledge for making hiring decisions or assessing job candidates in an objective way. and trying to be aware of those stereotypes that can get activated when you don't have complete information about the job candidates, and try to collect as much as information that you need about the job candidate, which are objective, so you don't you control the role of stereotyping, and also be aware and mindful of the status theory, which explains how the evaluation might happen because of higher status, lower status, that basically based off as sociology explains this higher lower status and how this happens, but because it's not the scope of this study, I just explain they are there, and empirical studies shows that they can interfere. So this sensitivity training trains managers about how human brain works and how, in absence of complete information, this might happen. It gives awareness to hiring managers about their stereotypes and how stereotyping at all works, and also trains them that how this stereotyping and this biased decision making, or the dictation of higher lower status information when making decision can result or can lead to making hiring decisions which are biased. And when we feed in the information into the system, how AI can make the same biased decision making. So basically the sensitivity training is, the content of sensitivity training is how stereotyping works, how status can interfere with assessing a job candidate's competence, and also awareness of how machine learning works, and how algorithms can, reproduce the same biases. So my third hypothesis is that hiring managers' decisions after receiving sensitivity training on stereotypes and status characteristics negatively moderate the relationship between biased datasets and machine learning outcomes, such that the influence of biased datasets machine learning is reduced and it results to less biased decision making. So here is my hypothesized model. As you can see here, after we trained hiring managers with this sensitivity training, they can hopefully they make less biased decision making, and it can moderate the relationship between biased data sets and machine learning, and results to less biased decision making. So how this study can direct future studies? This study provided a conceptual model for understanding and mitigating biases in AI-based hiring systems. This is a conceptual model, so future studies can focus on operationalizing and testing the model to validate its effectiveness. It can be studied how combining sensitivity training with other bias mitigation strategies can further reduce biases, and the finding can help us to use AI, first use AI in a way which is less biased, because as I mentioned in this presentation, AI works on historical data, and most important, even more important than that, is the fact that by providing sensitivity training, we can train our managers to make less biased decisions when hiring and when managing recruitment and selection step. Thank you for your attention, and here are my references. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you again.